Talk English Vault.
Learn English with podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk English Vault. I'm Sarah, and I'm really glad you've joined us for today's episode.
And I'm James. And today, we're doing something a little different. We're stepping into territory that's really important, but that a lot of English learners feel genuinely unsure about.
That's right. Today, we're talking about how to discuss global conflicts in English. And I want to say from the start, this isn't about politics. It's not about telling you what to think or which side to be on.
Exactly. It's purely about language, because global conflicts, wars, international disputes, humanitarian crises, these topics come up in conversations, in the news, in classrooms, in workplaces, and being able to discuss them in English calmly, thoughtfully, and respectfully is a really valuable skill.
And for many of our listeners, this might be especially personal. You might come from a country or a region that has experienced conflict, or you might want to be able to talk about world events with English-speaking friends or colleagues without feeling lost or uncomfortable.
So today, we're going to have a genuine conversation about the language, the vocabulary, and the way English speakers typically discuss these sensitive topics. And we'll keep it balanced, we'll keep it respectful, and we'll keep it useful.
Let's get into it.
Sarah, let's start with the why. Why is it so important for English learners to be able to talk about global conflicts specifically?
I think there are a few really important reasons. The first one is the news. If you're consuming English language news, BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera English, The Guardian, you're going to encounter this vocabulary constantly. Words like ceasefire, sanctions, humanitarian aid, displacement, negotiations. If you don't know these words, you can't really follow what's being reported.
That's such a practical point. And the second reason, conversations. Especially if you live, work, or study in an English-speaking environment, global events come up. Someone at work mentions something in the news. A classmate asks your opinion on an international situation. You want to be able to respond calmly and intelligently, rather than just shrugging and saying, I don't know.
And the third reason, and I think this is the most important one, is empathy and understanding. When you have the language to discuss something difficult, you're able to engage with it rather than avoid it. And engaging with difficult topics, thoughtfully, is how we build understanding between people from very different backgrounds.
That's beautifully put. And I think there's something really powerful about an English learner from one part of the world being able to have a nuanced, respectful conversation about a conflict happening somewhere else entirely. Language gives you that ability.
It really does. Okay, so let's start with the vocabulary, because the first barrier for most learners is simply not knowing the words.
Right. Let's just chat through some of the most essential vocabulary. And I want to do this naturally, not like a dictionary reading, just talking through what these words mean and how they're used.
Perfect. So let's start with some of the most common words you'll hear when global conflicts are being discussed. James, what are the ones that come up most often for you?
Okay, so the first one I always think of is conflict itself. A conflict is essentially any serious disagreement or struggle. It can be between countries, groups, or even individuals. But when we talk about global conflicts, we usually mean armed conflicts, situations where violence is involved.
And related to that, war and warfare. War is the general term for armed conflict between nations or groups. Warfare is more about the methods or type of fighting, like urban warfare or cyber warfare.
Then there's ceasefire, which is one of the most hopeful words in this vocabulary set. A ceasefire is an agreement to stop fighting, even temporarily. It doesn't mean the conflict is over, but it means the shooting has paused.
And peace talks or negotiations. These are the discussions that happen when parties in a conflict try to find a resolution. You'll hear peace talks are underway, or both sides have agreed to return to the negotiating table.
Return to the negotiating table. That's a really common expression. It means going back to formal discussions after a breakdown.
There's also sanctions, which come up a lot in international conflicts. Sanctions are penalties that one country or group of countries imposes on another, usually economic penalties, like restricting trade, freezing assets, banning certain exports. They're a way of applying pressure without military force.
And on the human side of conflicts, some really important words: refugees, people who have been forced to leave their home country because of conflict or persecution; displaced people, a broader term that includes people who've had to leave their homes but may still be within their own country.
Internally displaced is the specific term for that, people displaced within their own borders. And humanitarian crisis, this describes a situation where the basic needs of a large number of people, food, water, shelter, safety, are not being met because of conflict or disaster.
And humanitarian aid, the assistance sent to help those people, food, medicine, shelter, clean water. Organizations like the UN, the Red Cross, Médecins Sans Frontières, they provide humanitarian aid in conflict zones.
Conflict zone, another key term. Simply an area where armed conflict is actively happening.
And finally, diplomatic and diplomacy. Diplomacy is the management of international relations through negotiation rather than force. When someone says, "We need a diplomatic solution," they mean a solution reached through talking and agreement, not military action.
These words are really the foundation. And the thing is, once you know them, following news stories and having conversations about global events becomes so much more accessible.
Okay, so knowing the vocabulary is one thing, but how you talk about these topics in English is equally important. And there's a very specific kind of language that thoughtful, respectful English speakers use when discussing sensitive international topics.
Yes, and it's something that learners sometimes find surprising, because in some cultures, discussions about conflict and politics are very direct and passionate. But in a lot of English-speaking contexts, especially professional or academic ones, there's a real emphasis on being measured, balanced, and careful with language.
So, for example, instead of saying something very absolute like country X is completely wrong and country Y is completely right, a thoughtful English speaker might say, the situation is complex and there are legitimate concerns on multiple sides.
Or it's difficult to fully understand the situation without knowing the historical context. That phrase, historical context, comes up a lot. It means that to understand why a conflict is happening, you need to know what happened in the past between these groups or nations.
And there are some really useful phrases for expressing concern or sympathy without taking a strong political position. Things like, "It's deeply concerning to see the level of suffering. The humanitarian situation is increasingly dire. Our thoughts are with the civilians affected by this crisis. It's heartbreaking to see communities torn apart by conflict."
These phrases acknowledge the human cost of conflict, which is always real and always important, without necessarily commenting on the political or military aspects.
And for expressing a careful opinion, if you do want to share your view, there are some great hedging phrases. From what I understand, based on the reporting I've seen, it seems to me that, I think most people would agree that.
The word seem does a lot of work in these conversations. It seems like the situation is escalating. It seems that negotiations have stalled. There seems to be a lack of consensus. It signals that you're making an observation or inference, not stating something as absolute fact.
And escalate, that's such a key word in conflict discussions. When a situation escalates, it gets worse or more intense. Tensions are escalating. The conflict has escalated significantly. Both sides fear further escalation.
And the opposite, de-escalate, when efforts are made to reduce tension. International mediators are trying to de-escalate the situation.
Mediator, another important one. A mediator is a neutral third party, a person, country, or organization that helps two sides in a conflict to communicate and negotiate. Like a country might act as a mediator in peace talks between two other nations.
And one more phrase I really want to mention. According to reports, or according to source,
This is so important when discussing conflicts, because information in conflict situations is often disputed. Different sides present different versions of events. So good English speakers almost always attribute their information to a source, rather than stating it as absolute truth.
According to the UN, according to local reports, according to government officials. This tells your listener, I'm sharing what I've heard or read, not what I personally know to be fact. It's honest, and it's professional.
Okay, let's put all of this together. Let's just have a natural conversation, the way two thoughtful English speakers might genuinely discuss a conflict situation. We'll keep it general, not about any specific current conflict, just to show the language in action.
Perfect. I'll start. So, Sarah, I was reading the news this morning, and there was a major story about an ongoing conflict in a region I honestly don't know a huge amount about. And I found myself wanting to understand it better, but not really having the background. Do you ever feel like that?
All the time, actually. And I think that's such an honest thing to say, because a lot of conflicts have incredibly deep historical roots, things that go back decades or even centuries. So you can't really understand what's happening today without understanding what happened before.
Exactly. And what I find quite difficult, and I think a lot of people feel this, is that when you're watching the news, every outlet seems to frame things slightly differently. One source emphasizes one aspect of the conflict, another source emphasizes something completely different. It can be really hard to get a clear picture.
That's such a real challenge. And I think that's why it's so important to consume news from multiple sources, especially when it comes to conflict. No single outlet has the full story. And in many conflict situations, both sides will have very different accounts of what happened and why.
It's deeply concerning, isn't it, when you see the humanitarian impact? Because regardless of the political or military aspects, the civilians caught in the middle, that's what really gets to me. Families displaced, people losing their homes, children growing up in conflict zones.
Absolutely. And I think that's something most people can agree on, regardless of their political views. The human cost of conflict is always devastating. The scale of displacement in some of the world's current crises is genuinely heartbreaking.
And it makes you think about the role of international organizations, the UN, humanitarian agencies. There seems to be a real debate about how effective they can be when political will isn't there. Like, a ceasefire can be brokered, but if the parties don't genuinely commit to it, it falls apart very quickly.
That's so true. And I think there's a broader conversation to be had about diplomacy, about whether the international community has the tools and the unity to actually resolve these conflicts. It seems to me that when major powers are divided on an issue, it becomes almost impossible to reach a consensus at the international level.
And that has real consequences for the people on the ground, because while the diplomats are negotiating, or failing to negotiate, real people are living through the consequences every single day.
It really puts the language we use into perspective, doesn't it? Like ceasefire, negotiations, sanctions. These are just words, but behind every one of them are millions of real lives.
That's exactly right. And I think as English learners and speakers, being able to discuss these topics thoughtfully is part of being a responsible global citizen. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to engage honestly, listen carefully, and speak with compassion.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's just share some practical tips for anyone who finds themselves in a conversation about global conflicts in English and wants to handle it well.
Tip 1. Listen before you speak. Especially if you're in a conversation with someone who has personal experience of a conflict, a refugee, someone from the affected region. Listen first. Their lived experience will always be more valuable than anything you've read.
Tip 2. Use hedging language. As we talked about, it seems, from what I understand, according to reports, these phrases show humility. They signal that you're sharing a perspective, not declaring the truth.
Tip 3. Acknowledge complexity. Almost every global conflict has a deeply complex history. Avoid reducing it to a simple good versus bad narrative. Saying, "It's a really complex situation," or "There are many factors involved," shows maturity and intellectual honesty.
Tip 4. Separate the political from the human. Even if you have strong political views about a conflict, you can always acknowledge the human suffering on all sides. That's a position almost everyone can agree on, and it keeps the conversation constructive.
Tip 5. Know when to step back. If a conversation is becoming very heated or if someone is becoming upset, it's completely fine to say, "This is clearly something you feel very strongly about. I respect that. Maybe we can come back to this another time." Stepping back gracefully is a real communication skill.
And tip 6. Keep learning. Read widely. Follow international news from diverse sources. The more context you have, the more confidently and thoughtfully you'll be able to discuss these topics in English.
All right, your Talk English Vault challenge for this week.
We want you to find one international news story in English about a conflict or global crisis somewhere in the world. Read it or watch it, and then write 5 sentences in English about what you understood.
Try to use at least 3 of the vocabulary words from today. Things like ceasefire, displacement, humanitarian aid, negotiations, diplomatic, escalate. And try to use the phrase according to at least once to attribute your information properly.
Then drop those 5 sentences in the YouTube comments below. We will read them, we will respond, and we will be so impressed by the effort you put in.
Because this kind of English, thoughtful, careful, world-aware English, is genuinely impressive, and it's something that will set you apart in professional and academic settings.
If today's episode was useful for you, please give it a thumbs up. It helps our channel reach more English learners who need it.
Subscribe to Talk English Vault and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. We release fresh content every week.
And please share this episode, especially with someone who wants to improve their English for professional, academic, or news-related conversations. Today's vocabulary could make a real difference for them.
Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate.
And keep building your English one important conversation at a time. See you next episode.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.